The conception and the birth of Anakin Skywalker has been one of the most persistent mysteries within the Star Wars galaxy, both within and out of it, with various different explanations being proposed by fans from across the world. While many fan interpretation is split, with some believing that Palpatine himself influenced the Force and the midichlorians to create Anakin, and others believing that it was his master in Darth Plagueis, the original master to Sidious. Each side and argument has to have merit of its own, and some even believe entirely in different theories. While there has not yet been a canonical explanation for Anakin's birth, despite the Force itself birthing him, there were early drafts of Revenge of the Sith that gives us a more concrete answer and a fully formed revelation that fully explains exactly where Anakin Skywalker came from, how he was meant to have some sort of connection to Palpatine, and a full explanation of Anakin's birth according to scrapped ideas that were left on the cutting room floor for Revenge of the Sith. So stick with us today, weary acolytes of the galaxy, and let's explore how Anakin's birth was originally meant to be explained according to these drafts. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, a being born purely of the Force itself, influenced by the midichlorians, a being presented solely to destroy the Sith. Anakin Skywalker is this chosen one, and the being long foretold of. But what is this deleted concept for the true reason behind Anakin Skywalker's birth? Why did George Lucas ultimately abandon it? And what was the full explanation? In the opera scene in Revenge of the Sith, we learned that Darth Plagueis was able to manipulate the midichlorians into creating life itself, as explained by Palpatine. And within the scene itself, it is implied that this is the explanation behind Anakin's birth. Until this point, all we've come to learn about Anakin's conception is that he had no father to speak of, which was previously cited to be a seemingly random and senseless immaculate conception, with no feasible explanation by Shmi Skywalker nor the Jedi, as she herself is completely baffled by Anakin. According to IMDb, however, there is in fact a proper explanation, and an extended scene would have detailed Palpatine divulging the truth of his master's practices to Anakin, including the fullest extent of Plagueis' experimentation. With this information, let's go ahead and deduce exactly what Palpatine would have told the young Skywalker of his true parentage. The scene would have culminated by revealing that it was in fact Darth Plagueis who impregnated Shmi Skywalker, albeit inadvertently. In the years leading up to 42 BBY, Plagueis took a deep dive into the science of Sith alchemy, taking it upon himself to experiment with different methods of the Force, as well as how to manipulate it, that ultimately culminated with his grand discovery, the ability to create life. His initial objective was to figure out how to achieve eternal life by manipulating his own midichlorians to keep him alive forever, with the hopes that he would be able to outrun the force of death itself. This occasion was formally known as the Grand Experiment, and was the product of years of toil and research. With the assistance of his apprentice Darth Sidious, he was able to make incredible headway in his fields of Sith alchemy, and the prospects of immortality no longer seemed impossible, as Sidious likewise became infatuated with the idea of living forever. They toiled away together, with Plagueis in his laboratory, figuring out how to truly bend the power of the Force to his will, though his experiments were a failure, and he largely gave up on this for several years, believing that the Force would one day take him. While the end result was not exactly what the two Sith had set out to achieve, it's interesting to briefly note that he did discover a method of pseudo-immortality through a process known as transference, which was the Force act of transferring one's spirit into a new body, which would then act as a vessel for the new deceased Sith Lord, preventing their consciousness from dying and allowing them to live on for an additional few years until this new body aged and died out. This later became the foundation of how Palpatine in canon was able to survive his apparent demise on the Death Star, but the process would prove to be imperfect, and after Plagueis' failures in 42 BBY, he largely gave up on the prospect of eternal life, and continued on with other studies and dark side practices. 10 years later, however, during the crisis of Naboo, Plagueis would come to learn that a boy was discovered on Tatooine by the Jedi Master known as Qui-Gon Jinn and his young apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, as Plagueis would come to learn that Jinn believed that the boy was in fact the chosen one of ancient prophecy. Plagueis immediately set out to learn as much as he could about this young boy, Anakin Skywalker, making the connection between the boy's birthday and his failed experiments with the midichlorians that may have far wider reaches and implications than he had initially believed. All of this was to be revealed to Anakin in a crushing blow of the young man's confidence. Palpatine would explain that the Jedi prophecy of a chosen one sent to destroy the Sith was nothing but a lie, and that if anything, Anakin was destined to join the ranks of the dark side and become a Sith himself, his very father, Plagueis, and Palpatine directly. During this time, and the time of Anakin's conception, Plagueis was a renowned public figure. However, it would only be a matter of days before Sidious would ultimately enter his master's apartment and execute him in his sleep, putting an abrupt end to his investigation of the chosen one, Anakin, but not before realizing that the experimentation that he had conducted all those years ago might have actually had far greater consequences than he previously believed. This meant that Plagueis had succeeded and created a being essentially composed of living force energies, manipulating the very fabric of the force itself into creating sentient life, and one of the single most powerful force-sensitive individuals in galactic history. When Sidious took over as the reigning Sith Master, however, he developed his own plan for Anakin, his would-be son, because where Plagueis sought to create the perfect force being and use it as a vessel for his own consciousness, Palpatine set out to create a dyad with the newly discovered chosen one, usurping his master in the process. In the deleted scene in question, which showcases Palpatine spelling out the full truth of Anakin's birth to Anakin, telling the story of his master and their experiments, while attempting to coax Anakin into the dark side, after realizing that Palpatine was the elusive Sith Lord that the Jedi had been hunting throughout the duration of the Clone Wars, and this quote leaves nothing to chance nor ambiguity that Palpatine is Anakin's father. In the initial script, the quote by Palpatine that would have explained that his master, quote, used the power of the Force to will the midichlorians to start the cell division that created Anakin, which leaves no room for misinterpretation. Whether or not this is still the canonical explanation, however, is up to interpretation to the fans, as many would consider the initial inclusion of the idea to indicate that it was the original vision of George Lucas. However, others may claim that by removing it from the final product, the moment was removed utterly from canon, and is no longer a part of Lucas's vision. Regardless of whether or not it is revealed to be the full explanation within canon, this explanation that was first proposed by the producers of Revenge of the Sith seems to be a cohesive answer, an answer to the decades-long mystery of Anakin Skywalker's conception. But anyway, Acolytes, what do you think of this explanation? What do you think of this deleted moment? And do you like this origin for the birth of Anakin Skywalker? And if not, then what other explanation would you like to see if the answer is ever truly to be revealed in Star Wars canon? As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.